The Katy Perry situation just got worse. Sorry, what is this? Is this a Katy Perry song? Or is this some sort of bassline trap SoundCloud remix they're just playing while I brawl?
Remember when Katy Perry was everywhere? Now, she's the butt of every joke. From bizarre PR stunts to epic career failures, this is the untold story of how Katy Perry turned her pop empire into a joke, and why the internet can't stop laughing. There was a time when Katy Perry was the queen of pop. She wasn't just a chart-topping artist, she was everywhere.
He wants her to be happy and he wants her to be authentic. He just wants her to stop and enjoy the life that she has built.
In 2008, with the release of I Kissed a Girl, she became the center of attention, sparking conversations and controversies that only made her more famous. The song wasn't just a hit, it was a cultural moment, a bold statement that defied her conservative upbringing. But let's not forget where it all began. Katy Perry wasn't always the latex-wearing, chart-busting diva we know today. She started out as a gospel singer, raised in a strict Pentecostal household. Imagine this, a young Katy singing about Jesus in a church under the watchful eye of her very religious parents. Fast forward to her debut gospel album, and it's a complete flop. At just 16, her first shot at fame fell flat, and the world wasn't ready for what was to come. She could have stayed in gospel, stuck to her values, and kept grinding, but instead, she made a bold choice. Katy Perry was determined to break free from her past, and she did so with one clear mission: sell out for fame. In an interview, she famously admitted, "I sold my soul to the devil." This wasn't just a metaphor, it was a declaration of what was to come. The rise of a pop icon willing to leave her past behind and embrace a brand new, risk-taking persona. She was ready to do whatever it took to make it big. And make it big, she did. But what followed would be a roller coaster that no one could have predicted. If there was ever a time Katy Perry seemed untouchable, it was during the teenage dream era.
Her just sprinting around the stage. Alright, Mo Farah, calm down.
Released in 2010, this album wasn't just successful, it was revolutionary. Katy became the first woman to have 5 #1 hits from one album on the Billboard Hot 100: California Girls, Teenage Dream, Firework, E.T., Last Friday Night. These weren't just songs, they were anthems. For a while, it felt like Katy Perry had unlocked the secret to pop stardom. But as much as she was celebrated, there was something more behind the scenes. Katy wasn't just riding the wave of her own talent, she was being expertly guided by some of the industry's top producers. In fact, some of her biggest hits were the work of Dr. Luke, the notorious producer later tangled in legal battles with Keisha.
Did Katy Perry and Orlando Bloom break up after 9 years?
At the time, no one knew the extent of his involvement, but it was clear that Katy Perry's success wasn't entirely her own creation. She was more of a pop puppet, dancing to the beat of someone else's genius. Despite the chart-topping success, this was the beginning of Katy's transformation into what some would later describe as a manufactured pop star. It wasn't just the hits, it was the image, the performance, and the branding that turned Katy into a pop machine. As she strutted on stage in cupcake bras and sang about fireworks, she became the embodiment of mainstream pop. Fun, catchy, and utterly digestible. But there was something lurking beneath the surface. The cracks in Katy's image were starting to show. She was now the symbol of perfect pop, but behind the glitter and glam, there were questions about the real substance of her fame. Would the teen dream last, or was Katy Perry's brand built on sand? As Katy Perry's star continued to rise, so did the whispers of doubt. Her rise to fame wasn't just a result of her catchy tunes and infectious personality.
What you're doing is you're like really finding the love for yourself, because
it was the carefully crafted machine behind the scenes that made it all possible. But soon enough, the glitter started to fade, and cracks in her persona began to show. One of the biggest signs of trouble was her decision to work with Dr. Luke, the producer behind some of her biggest hits. At the time, Dr. Luke was already facing legal accusations from Keisha, who accused him of sexual assault. Katy, however, chose to remain silent on the issue, continuing to collaborate with him despite the growing controversy. It was the first sign that Katy's brand wasn't as squeaky clean as it appeared. The public wasn't blind, and they started to question her loyalty and values. How could someone who preached feminism and empowerment turn a blind eye to such serious accusations?
Sorry, is that a poop with, like a hernia? Is that a hernia? Like a poop with sweet corn? Is that because sweet corn doesn't digest, does it, guys? So I think, like, is this person...
But Katy wasn't just silent. She kept pushing her girl power image. She was paraded as a feminist icon, a beacon of strength for women everywhere. Yet, when it came time to stand by another woman in need, she chose to stay neutral. The #Free Keisha movement was gaining momentum, with fans and celebrities rallying behind Keisha, but Katy never publicly supported her. It was a glaring contradiction to the image she had carefully cultivated. This was a major blow to her credibility. How could she preach empowerment when she wouldn't stand up for a woman in crisis? The hypocrisy was evident, and fans started to see through the facade. They began questioning whether Katy Perry was truly the feminist icon she claimed to be, or just another celebrity riding the wave of a well-executed PR campaign. With every new move, Katy seemed to dig herself deeper into a hole. But instead of addressing the criticism, she doubled down, pushing the same narrative while distancing herself from the real issues. What was once a carefully built empire now appeared to be held together by a series of contradictions and half-truths. And the worst part? She was the one putting the final nails in her own coffin. Katy Perry's downfall didn't happen overnight, but the first signs of trouble were hard to ignore. While she was still trying to hold on to her pop queen status, she began making decisions that screamed desperation. These moves weren't just missteps. They were full-on PR disasters, and the internet was ready to tear her apart.
This recent album got released. It's called 1432. Now we're going to have a look at the streams of how that's done later in this video. And to celebrate the release of her new album, she released a tour called the Lifetimes Tour, and she's currently going around the globe.
Her attempt to maintain relevance reached new heights in 2017 with a bizarre PR stunt, the Space Mission. Yes, you heard that right. Katy Perry joined Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin spaceflight, making it seem like an empowering moment for women everywhere. The catch? The entire thing reeked of a rich celebrity trying to prove something. She floated around in a billionaire's rocket for just 11 minutes. And for what? To empower women? The public wasn't buying it. Instead, the stunt became the laughingstock of social media. Memes flooded the internet, and critics tore her apart for being out of touch with reality. It was a tone-deaf attempt to seem relevant in an industry that was already moving past her. But even more humiliating than the backlash was the reaction from Katy's own fiancé, Orlando Bloom. While Katy was busy spinning this as a feminist victory, Orlando publicly called it cringeworthy and embarrassing. Imagine that, your own partner calling out your latest stunt as laughable.
He advised her against this album. She did it. Now, again, this album had a lot of problems, specifically the Dr. Luke of it all, the producer who was having so much accusations himself and with Kesha and everything else, and which Kesha says Katy knew, and then Katy basically was like, I don't care, I'm
It was a clear sign that even those closest to her were losing patience with her antics. This was no longer about being a pop star. It was about staying in the public eye, no matter how ridiculous the effort. Katy Perry was no longer the carefree, quirky pop star. She was now the embodiment of desperation, clinging to anything she could to stay relevant. The Space Mission wasn't the only cringeworthy stunt she pulled. From political lyrics in her songs to bizarre interviews, everything about Katy's image became forced. Fans who once adored her quirky personality started to see her as a hollow shell of what she once was. The cracks were no longer subtle, they were inescapable, and Katy was the one making them wider with every move. After the disastrous spaceflight, Katy Perry's PR stunts didn't slow down. They only got more bizarre and embarrassing. If anything, her desperation to stay relevant reached new extremes. Her next big comeback was the release of her 2020 album 1432, which she promoted with all the subtlety of a train wreck. The album's lead single, Women's World, was supposed to be her big feminist anthem, but instead, it was a critical disaster.
Now, notice, in 9 years, I hadn't seen them together until she needed to launch this new album. I never really saw them, and instead she was out there promoting the couple as much as the album. It was pretty awful.
Critics slammed it as uninspired and tepid, with some even calling it garbage. The song flopped hard, failing to chart and quickly fading into oblivion. It was a sign that Katy's star had dimmed, not just because of the public's shifting tastes, but because her music no longer resonated with the very fans who once sang every word of her hits. And it wasn't just the music that was falling apart. Her image was completely crumbling. Katy had spent years positioning herself as a feminist icon, a champion for women's empowerment. But after working with Dr. Luke, the very producer accused of assault by Kesha, and releasing a song like Women's World, her credibility took a huge hit. Fans who had once cheered for her were now questioning her integrity. How could she preach female empowerment while cozying up to the very people accused of exploiting women in the industry? It wasn't just the music or her relationships that were under fire. It was her entire persona. Katy had always relied on her larger-than-life image, the eccentric outfits, the quirky performances.
Apparently, she received little to no support from Bloom, who blasted the embarrassing debacle during Explosive Road.
But now, those very things that once made her a pop star felt outdated, forced, and frankly, embarrassing. Her performances, once vibrant and full of energy, now felt hollow and desperate. It was as if she was trying to convince everyone she was still the pop queen, but the magic was gone. The fans weren't blind to this shift. As her stunts grew more ridiculous and her music less memorable, they began to turn on her. What was once a loyal fan base now mocked her on social media, and every new release became fodder for internet jokes. Katy Perry had transformed from a cultural icon into a meme, and the more she tried to claw her way back, the deeper she dug her hole. With every failed attempt to recapture her former glory, she reinforced the narrative that her career was more about spectacle than substance. It was clear, Katy Perry had lost touch with the very people who made her a star. And the more she tried to force herself back into the limelight with one ridiculous stunt after another, the more she cemented her place as a pop star on the decline. By 2024, it was clear to everyone, Katy Perry's career wasn't just in decline, it was in freefall. After her disastrous PR stunts, failed music releases, and public embarrassments, she doubled down on her worst instincts with the release of 1432. If she thought this album would be her big comeback, she was sorely mistaken. The album was criticized for being uninspired, outdated, and robotic. It was as if Katy Perry had completely abandoned her pop roots, opting for recycled beats and hollow lyrics that failed to connect with the audience. Her desperation wasn't just visible in her music, it was everywhere. Katy had clearly become addicted to staying in the spotlight, no matter the cost. With every new single, she seemed to be fighting to hold on to a relevance that was quickly slipping away. The more she pushed, the more her fans turned against her. What once seemed like quirky and fun performances now felt forced and out of place, like a person desperately trying to relive their glory days without realizing that those days were long gone. And let's not forget the Lifetimes tour, which was supposed to be a celebration of her new album. Instead, it became the most embarrassing chapter in her career. Katy ran around the stage like a hyperactive kid, fighting off inflatable crab monsters with a lightsaber, all while awkwardly interacting with bizarre props that looked more suited for a high school theater production than a global pop tour. The tour quickly became a public spectacle, with fans filming every cringeworthy moment and posting it online. Her once energetic performances had turned into a laughable display of desperation. The numbers didn't lie. Over 70% of the seats across North America were empty. What was supposed to be a triumphant return turned into a public humiliation. And to make matters worse, Katy seemed oblivious to how badly she was failing. Instead of acknowledging the growing backlash, she kept pushing the same tired persona, the same gimmicks, the same stunts. But no one was buying it anymore. This was the point of no return. The fans who had once screamed her lyrics were now roasting her on TikTok. The internet had moved on, and Katy Perry was left behind, still clinging to her outdated image, trying to convince the world she was still the pop queen she used to be. But the truth was undeniable. Katy Perry had become a walking, talking PR disaster. And as her career crumbled, so did her public image. What had once been a carefully curated empire now lay in ruins, and Katy was the one who had built it and destroyed it with her own hands. As Katy Perry's career spiraled out of control, she didn't just fade into obscurity, she went down with a bang. But instead of a glorious, triumphant return, her final attempts at relevance only highlighted how far she had fallen. It was as if she couldn't let go of the spotlight, even when it was clear the world had moved on. And in 2024, she made a decision that would prove just how out of touch she had become. A public space mission with Jeff Bezos's Blue Origin. This wasn't a comeback. This was the final proof of her desperation. The space stunt was, in theory, an opportunity for Katy to reclaim her empowering woman image. After all, how could anyone criticize her for going to space? But that's exactly what happened. The entire event felt like a grotesque PR move, more about showing off her wealth and status than actually empowering anyone. Floating in zero gravity for 11 minutes in a billionaire's rocket wasn't a feminist statement. It was just a rich celebrity trying to stay relevant. And the internet had a field day. Memes flooded every social media platform, mocking the event as tone-deaf, elitist, and out of touch with reality. What made it worse? Her own fiancé, Orlando Bloom, couldn't even pretend to be supportive. He publicly slammed the stunt, calling it cringeworthy and embarrassing. Imagine that. Your own partner, who's been by your side through every career mess, finally calls you out. At that point, it was clear. Katy Perry was a walking disaster, and even those closest to her had had enough. But Katy didn't stop there. When the backlash hit hard, she pulled the "I'm mentally struggling" card, claiming the entire ordeal damaged her mental health. It was a classic move. Shift the blame from the disastrous PR stunt to personal victimhood. But here's the thing. Katy Perry wasn't a victim. She was the architect of her own downfall, and the world wasn't buying the sob story. Her career wasn't just on the decline. It was in its final stages. The public had grown tired of her antics, and the more she tried to push her way back into the spotlight, the more she cemented her status as a punchline. What was supposed to be a comeback was the nail in the coffin for Katy Perry's career. She wasn't just fading into the background, she was actively dismantling her own legacy with every misguided move she made. And as her career collapsed, so did her carefully crafted image of empowerment, leaving behind nothing but a trail of public humiliation. By now, it was abundantly clear. Katy Perry's entire career had become a slow-motion train wreck, and the world couldn't look away. From her over-the-top space mission to her embarrassing Lifetimes tour, it seemed like every move she made only deepened her public humiliation. What was once a dominant force in pop music was now reduced to nothing more than a series of cringe-worthy stunts and desperate attempts to revive a career that no longer existed. The internet had moved on, and Katy Perry was left scrambling for relevance. The thing about Katy's downfall was that it wasn't just about her music anymore. It was about everything she had come to represent. Her entire brand, built on catchy tunes, quirky performances, and an image of empowerment, had been exposed as nothing more than a hollow shell. Fans who once cheered her on had long since turned their backs, and the once popular songs that filled the airwaves were now just embarrassing relics of a time gone by. Her image as a feminist icon was nothing but an illusion, shattered by her actions and choices. But what's perhaps most ironic is that, despite all the public mockery, Katy's downfall has become a spectacle in itself. Her career, once a juggernaut, is now fodder for viral memes, Twitter threads, and late-night jokes. She's the internet's favorite punching bag, and every new attempt at a comeback just adds fuel to the fire. Katy Perry didn't just fall from grace. She made sure the entire world watched as she burned every bridge on the way down. And while she's been trying to claw her way back into relevance, there's something almost tragic about it all. In a way, Katy Perry has become a cautionary tale for the modern celebrity. Someone who thought they could reinvent themselves endlessly without realizing they were losing their soul in the process. It's like watching a once powerful figure stumble through one embarrassing moment after another, each more desperate than the last. The last laugh? Well, that's for the internet, which has turned her fall into entertainment for millions. But here's the kicker. Even as her career continues to implode, Katy Perry is still clinging to the spotlight, trying to reclaim her throne as the pop queen. The sad truth? That throne was already abandoned long ago. The world has moved on, and it's doubtful that anything Katy does now will ever bring her back to the top. What was once a bright and shiny career is now just a slow, painful crash, playing out in real time for everyone to see. But hey, at least she's giving us something to talk about. Because in the end, that's all Katy Perry has left, the punchline to a never-ending joke. When a career begins to unravel in public, it's hard not to feel a mix of fascination and pity. Katy Perry's fall from grace is one of those rare examples where the rise and fall of a pop star was so dramatic, it became a cautionary tale for anyone thinking they can reinvent themselves endlessly without consequences. From her days as the pop princess to the bizarre attempts at staying relevant, her career became an ongoing spectacle that captivated the world. But with every failed album, every cringeworthy PR stunt, and every awkward performance, Katy Perry's status as a pop icon slipped further into irrelevance. The sad part is, Katy was once the ultimate example of pop success. Her career was built on a series of hit singles that defined a generation. Songs like Firework and California Girls became anthems, and she ruled the charts. But somewhere along the way, the magic faded. It wasn't just that her music stopped connecting with her audience. It was the persona she had built around herself. What once seemed like an authentic, fun-loving pop star became a hollow shell of forced optimism and desperate attempts to revive an image that was no longer believable. Now, looking back, it's almost hard to remember the impact she once had. The Katy Perry who once blazed across the pop music scene has been replaced by a caricature of herself, chasing after every trend, misfiring with every new project, and losing her grasp on. What made her great in the first place? Her career isn't just a decline, it's a crash and burn. Every new failure becomes more entertaining for the internet, but it also highlights the deeper issue. Katy Perry wasn't just losing her career, she was losing her identity. She became the very thing she once mocked, someone trying desperately to stay in the spotlight at any cost, even if it meant embarrassing herself on a global stage. What's left now isn't a comeback story, but a tragic end to an era. Her music no longer holds the same power, her performances are a joke, and her brand, once built on fun, empowerment, and catchy anthems, is nothing more than an echo of its former self. The internet may continue to laugh, mock, and meme her downfall, but in the end, it's clear. Katy Perry's time at the top is over, and the pop world has long moved on. She became a relic of an era, clinging to whatever scraps of relevance she could find. But ultimately, she was outpaced by newer stars who understood the changing tides of pop culture. And that's the reality of the situation. Katy Perry may have once been an unstoppable force, but now her career is a fading memory. The bubblegum pop that once dominated the airwaves has burst, and with it, so has her legacy. The fall of Katy Perry isn't just about one failed album or tour. It's about the complete collapse of a carefully constructed empire, brought down by a series of poor choices, misguided stunts, and a refusal to adapt. At this point, it's not just her music that's finished, it's her entire career. Katy Perry's career, once a shining example of pop success, has now become a cautionary tale of excess, contradictions, and self-sabotage. The pop world has moved on, leaving her behind in a cloud of failed stunts and misguided attempts to recapture the magic that once made her a household name. But if there's one thing Katy Perry has proven over the years, it's that she refuses to go quietly. She may be a walking punchline now, but in a strange way, that's the one thing she still manages to control. Her entire career has become a meme, a collection of embarrassing moments, awkward performances, and desperate PR stunts that are too cringeworthy not to laugh at. Whether it's her inflatable crab monsters, 11-minute space missions, or disastrous album releases, Katy Perry has somehow managed to turn her downfall into a form of entertainment. It's no longer about the music or the tours, it's about the train wreck that is her public life. The internet has gleefully turned her into a spectacle, but maybe that's all Katy ever wanted: attention. The reality is, the Katy Perry of today is a far cry from the pop queen she once was. Her once loyal fan base has moved on to newer, fresher artists who understand the landscape of modern pop music. Even her longtime relationship with Orlando Bloom couldn't survive the chaos she created. And as her career implodes, Katy's forced to face the harsh truth. She is no longer the pop star people want to hear from. But in the end, maybe that's what makes Katy Perry's downfall so fascinating. She never really had the depth or substance to begin with. She was always a product of her own marketing, a shiny, colorful pop spectacle that was fun while it lasted. But like all trends, her time has passed. Her latest antics may still grab headlines, but they're only proving one thing: Katy Perry is no longer a force in pop music. She's just the punchline to a very long joke, and the sad part is, she's the one telling it. So, what's next for Katy Perry? Maybe she'll try again with another ridiculous stunt, or maybe she'll disappear into obscurity, content with the fame she's already earned. But one thing's for sure: Katy Perry will always be remembered, not for her music or her contributions to pop culture, but for how she managed to destroy her own career piece by piece in full view of the public.